Chapter 11, Introducing CSS. So we've already talked a little bit about CSS, but this chapter will cover it in quite a bit more detail. So let's start off by talking about the benefits of CSS. So remember, CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. Precise type and layout control. You can achieve print-like precision using CSS. Less work. You can change the appearance of an entire site by editing one style sheet. This also ensures consistency of formatting throughout the site. An external style sheet that's linked to all your HTML pages. If I change the style of a heading, H1 heading, it will apply to my entire website, which is nice. Accessibility. When all matters of presentation are handled by CSS, you can mark up your content meaningfully, making it more accessible for non-visual or mobile devices. And flexibility. The same HTML markup can be made to appear in dramatic different ways. So here's an example. These pages all have the exact HTML source, but different style sheets. So it's the same content, just styled differently. I want to show you another example. I use this W3 Schools quite a bit when I just need to look up something quick with HTML, CSS. I feel like it's pretty good at giving you, as you can kind of see over here on the left-hand side, it gives nice examples of, text, fonts, icons, links, all sorts of things, colors, and so forth. So I use it quite a bit, even for other languages, JavaScript, if I need to look at an example and so forth. Here's another example of one HTML page with multiple styles. So right here, we're looking at it with no styling. If I click on Style Sheet 1, it applied some styling. It changes it to look like this. Same content, just different styling. Same content, different styling. Same content, different styling, and again, different styling. So you can see how much CSS can change the look of a website. How style sheets work. You start with a marked up document like HTML, that's what we've been doing in this class. Then you write styles for how you want elements to look using CSS syntax. You attach the styles to the document, and then the browser uses your instructions when rendering the elements. So each rule selects an element and declares how it should display. So this is a rule. The whole thing's a rule. This rule selects all H1 elements and declares that they should be green. Here's another rule. This rule selects all strong inline elements and declares that they should be red and in an italic font. Here is the style rule structure. So the whole thing is called a style rule, but it's made up of a selector and then a declaration. So the selector would be like H1, whatever element that you're wanting to apply these different styles to. And then a declaration has a property and a value. So a property could be like color and the value could be like red. There's many types of selectors. Here are two examples. You can have an element selector, so that'd be like a P, H1, those are elements. And then you have your properties. So property would be like color, red, background, blue, that sort of thing. You can also have this ID selector. Now there's a video after this section on Canvas that talks about ID selectors and class selectors. You'll definitely want to watch that, but in short, an ID selector is indicated by the pound symbol, and you could have an element that has this ID equals intro, and then this style would get applied to that element if they had that ID. Declarations are made up of property value pairs containing curly brackets. So you have your selector, then your property value pairs, and so obviously you can have more than one. You want to end each declaration with a semicolon to keep it separate from the next declaration. White space is ignored, so you can stack declarations to make them easier to read. Properties are defined in the CSS specifications. Values are dependent on the type of property. So if I was looking for color, my value would be an actual color like blue. If I was looking for width, it would be looking for a measurement like pixels. You can have CSS comments. A comment goes between this / star and then */. Any content between that is ignored by the browser. It will not be rendered on the screen. It's useful for leaving notes or section labels in the style sheet. Can be used within rules to temporarily hide style declarations in the design process. So yeah, sometimes I use comments quite a bit. Like I didn't necessarily, I might not have been applying this style rule correctly, didn't really want to get rid of it. I just commented it out so that it wasn't going to affect my website. But I could go back to it and uncomment it and work on it some more. Sometimes just because I develop curriculum and, if we're putting stuff on Canvas, I will put comments in not necessarily the CSS code, but I'll put it in the HTML code just so that I can search for my comments and move down the document. Sometimes it's hard to find what you're looking for when you're looking at the source code for an HTML or CSS document. Using comments can be a valuable tool, so you want to remember that you can do it and use it when appropriate. Adding styles to the document. There are 3 ways to attach a style sheet to a document. Adding styles to the document. There's 3 ways to attach a style sheet to a document. The page prior to this one on Canvas had a video where they talked about the 3 different ways to attach styles to a document. And so anyway, you can have an external style sheet, a whole separate sheet, but then your HTML code must link to that. You can have an embedded style sheet where the style is listed in the head of the HTML document within the style element, or you can have inline styles where property and values are added to an individual element with the style attribute. So like I said in the section before this, there's a video that goes through this. I definitely think you need to take a few minutes and make sure you watch that if you haven't already. The cascade rule order. When 2 rules have equal weight, rule order is used. Whichever rule appears last wins. So you can see I have 3 different rules for a paragraph. The last one will win. So the paragraphs would be green in this case. Styles may come from external style sheets, embedded style rules, and inline styles. The style rule that gets parsed last, the one closest to the content, will apply. So if I had an external style sheet, but then I had an inline style, the inline style would be the one that would win. Browsers see every element on the page as being contained in a little rectangular box. Block elements and inline elements participate in the box model. In this example, a blue border is added to all elements. The box model is the foundation of CSS page layout. Apply properties such as borders, margins, padding, and backgrounds to element boxes. And we did get some practice doing that with our last assignment. CSS units of measurements. CSS provides a variety of ways to specify measurements. You can have absolute units that have predefined meanings or real-world equivalents, or you can have relative units based on the size of something else, such as the default text size or the size of the parent element. Or you can have percentages calculated relative to another value, such as the size of the parent element. With the exception of pixels, absolute units are not appropriate for web design, but you do see, like for instance, width, height, specified in pixels right along. Relative units are based on the size of something else. The ones that I've seen the most are like EM, a unit equal to the current font size. We'll look at a slide in a second. And then VH, viewport height unit. So the EM unit is traditionally based on the width of the capital letter M in the font. So when the font size is 16 pixels, 1 EM is equal to 16 pixels. 2 EM is equal to 32 pixels, and so on. Because they're based on the font size of the current element, the size of an EM may not be consistent across the page. So if I have some, element and the font size is 12 pixels, that's what 1 EM is, but 2 EM would be 24 pixels. There's default font sizes for all your headings. If you specified a rule for a heading and it was 2 EM, it would be 2 times whatever the default font size was. Viewport percentage lengths. Viewport width and viewport height units are relative to the size of the viewport, which is the browser window. This should have said VW. VW is equal to 1/100th width of viewport. VH is equal to 1/100th height of viewport. So they're useful for making an element fill the viewport or a specified percentage of it. This image will be 50% the width and height of the viewport. Most browsers have some sort of developer tool to help you with your CSS and so forth. I'm going to show you, here's a little bit of a explanation on this slide that you can take a look at, but I'm going to actually go over to my Chrome right here. So this is one of the first examples that we ever looked at in this class. If I right click on it, I can just select page source, and you can see the HTML code that we have here. You can see that we have an embedded style sheet. It's between the style tags within the head element. So that's if you click on view page source. But if I click on inspect, you can see how if I click on one of these items right here, so this is like the HTML, I guess. If I click on this one, it highlights what's an H1 over here. And then you can see over here the different CSS properties. And then if you click down here, see how I'm right in the middle there? That shows you the element. And then padding, I don't think there was any padding here. No border. And then you see how I moved my mouse over to margin? You can see that there was a top and bottom margin. Now, H1, we specified this. So if I, let's see here. I'm going to expand that. You can see that here is how we specified H1. If I close that, back up. So let me click on this again. That's what we had specified right there. Notice down here it says inherited from body. So H1 was nested in the body element, and we had specified for the body that the background color was a specific color. So it inherited that automatically. Just something to play around with. You can see if I have a paragraph selected right here. I am clicking that we had some emphasis here. It's between the emphasis element. So it selects, when I select it, you can see it gets highlighted on the left. On the right, you can see font style is italic. It says user agent style sheet. So this would be the default style sheet. We didn't specify what this element was going to be, what the styling was going to be. Let's try one more. H2. You can see location and hours, doesn't really have any padding, no border, but you can see it has a margin on the top and bottom. All right, make sure you look at all the materials. This week was a little different than previous weeks, so make sure you look at each one of the materials that's listed on Canvas. And I picked a few videos. They weren't from me, but I thought they were pretty good at explaining things like different ways to attach style sheets to HTML pages. Talked about ID and class selectors. So make sure you take a look at all of that.